Welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast podcast with Wayne. I'm Patrick. If you're joining us on YouTube, subscribe, like our show, give us comments on anything you've seen thus far, including this one. We're always happy to receive your feedback. On IG as well, we're at Ball and Breakfast. You can also find us on Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as well. For tonight's show, we're going to keep on our NBA theme here. We basically went through an entire first round mock. We went through a lottery mock previously, and we're past the draft at this point. So, guys have been obviously, chosen for their selected teams. We are basically on the forefront of free agency at this point. So we have found ourselves in a very, very interesting spot for the NBA, for sports fans and everybody who loves watching transactions and things kind of transpire. It's almost like the season after the season, and I mean, for a lot of us, whatever sport it is that you really enjoy, I mean, sports these days have really, amped up this kind of week. So lots of fun and lots of activity for sure going on. But I guess how we're going to structure this one is we're first going to review the draft. We're going to talk about some winners, some losers overall, whether that's team or players. And then we're going to dive right into free agency. We're not going to go through every single player in the NBA from top to bottom, but we will talk about players and teams that we think are good fits for each other, and maybe talk about some of the salary cap implications of what teams are facing this offseason. So I guess without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Wayne to present one of his winners from the draft that happened last week.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. No, I mean, in terms of, I guess, winners, like, I don't know how you can go through this draft or talk about this draft without discussing what happened with the Houston Rockets, man, with getting Amin Thompson at number 4 and then getting Cam Whitmore at 20, like, who was a lot of people had him as a top 5 prospect. I think there were some concerns about maybe some workouts and some interviews that he had, but nothing really with regards to, I think, his player profile or kind of what he brings to the table there. So I don't know. I think that was a shocker. I don't know if it's been publicly addressed, why were people kind of disregarding him there. But hey, if I'm the Houston Rockets, I don't know how you can not be excited about getting essentially the number 4 and potentially number 5 prospect in the entire draft there. So I feel like that was such a big win for the Houston Rockets. And yeah, with the young talent they have right now, with Udoka as well, I feel like, hey, this team is setting up pretty well, I think, for next season.
Yeah, that's a great winner. It was definitely on my short list here. The Whitmore slide was very interesting to watch, especially after, we covered him going in the top 4. I think I put my name on both those picks, and I'm comfortable with it. I mean, I've heard, he's has some sort of knee injury that, had scared off some training staffs from certain teams. And then I think overall his head coach wasn't really hyping him up, which is actually pretty uncharacteristic of a head coach for any sort of college team, just based on recruiting and all that other good stuff. So I also already had some pretty bad interviews and workouts overall. So it's almost like a Jalen Carter situation in the NFL, where it's you start at the mountaintop and then, some bad words starts to circulate. People start having doubts. They're worried about you. And suddenly that free fall just starts to happen. But no, I'm totally on board with you. I think at this pick, their second first round pick, it's man, you might have just grabbed 2 top 5 guys in this draft. And what a way to add on to, this promising core of, Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, you got Şengün. It's a lot of fun. And Houston right now is really kind of in the driver's seat of everything, especially going into free agency too. So it's a perfect storm, and you just hope that they don't completely wet the bed. But there was a lot of teams I also thought, the Lakers, maybe it's not really Miami's type of guy, but, possibly Atlanta. It's you're looking at teams that are trying to vie for championships or really get into contention. It's I just felt this kind of guy falling into your lap it was just kind of a no-brainer for those two teams, in general. But we'll just have to see where it goes.
Yeah, for sure. Who do you got for your winner?
My winner, I have a couple teams, but I have one that I really liked, the Utah Jazz, just as far as what they added, to go Taylor Hendricks, Keontae George, and then, Sensabaugh in the first round, kind of grabbing a bunch of guys I think were at least on our short list, maybe our top 20 of guys I think should have been projected on some teams here. I think Hendricks was the kind of guy that I just love to grab. I mean, a four who's super athletic, can shoot. I mean, he's kind of able to space the floor, but he might be able to give you more than just a pop out 3 point stretch four kind of player. I think he's got a lot more upside in his game where maybe he's grabbing double digit rebounds, maybe he's helping to protect the rim a little bit, but just seems like a player you can really get behind as far as knowing that he's got a certain floor, it seems, but then also having some like serious potential to maybe be a star. Keontae George is kind of the same way. We didn't really know where he would fall in the first round. We saw him going as high as the 10-15 range all the way through the 20s. I think he fell pretty far in our mock, but he just seems like a consistent scorer, somebody who's going to be able to put in buckets. Now he goes into what I think is a perfect system for him, where it's like you've got so much other attention going to other shooters, other scorers. They traded for John Collins. It's like at this point, you got Sexton marking in to keep tabs on. Kessler's been pretty good underneath, and now Keontae George getting to run around and take shots or create create plays in a lot of ways. And I just think this is a really great fit and a really great, pick for that matter. And, now with Jordan Clarkson having a player option, it's like, we don't know if he's going to stay. So, just having Bryce Sensabaugh there to be kind of like a backstop, he's just another guy who, what they're saying is his athleticism, his playmaking is not as, good because of injuries, but he can shoot, the rock. So it's like, again, you've got all these creators around him. He just has to stand there and kind of shoot and hopefully defend his position. And it's like just a nice reserve to have. So, yeah, all in all, Utah, came away with what I think could be like three very startable players, a couple with really high upside. And it's just an exciting core and team overall.
Yeah, I think they really addressed kind of a lot of their needs. There was definitely that wing depth with Taylor Hendricks. I feel like that's a great, well, I think he's like oftentimes listed as a four, but he can definitely play that three and like a good size three. He's athletic as hell, so he can definitely be that kind of wing person to guard, the LeBron Jameses, the Kawhis out there, the Paul Georges, but then still be able to, contribute offensively and dribble the ball even a little bit. I think that's something he could certainly kind of work on a little bit, but at the same time, there's a lot of playmakers I think on that team, so he fits really right in there. And then you mentioned everyone else, like Keontae George and the player from Ohio State there too. But yeah, it's like they have a lot of talent there that I feel like can score, contribute immediately, and potentially also address some some free agents that might leave as well. So all in all, I think they probably have one of the better drafts for sure.
Yeah, is there any other teams or just players I'm missing here?
Yeah, well, for me at least, I went through like the later rounds. I thought there were some nice picks there. One that I saw was Dariq Whitehead from the Nets at 22. You're talking about one of the top players coming out of high school. Went to Duke and such. Went through some injuries, but he's going to be going to the Nets, who there's a load of like, hey, you want to contribute, want to come off the bench and score 20 points. By all means, be our guest. Like, very much, I think, they're not in a win now mode. They don't have too many like star players. Obviously, they got, Bridges and such. But at the same time, I feel like those players, there's room for a player like Dariq Whitehead, who almost kind of like a Karis LeVert type of mode, right? Where, had some success in college, but battled through some injuries, kind of comes under the radar. But at the same time, like, is put into an opportunity and has a lot of upside there. So that's where I feel like Dariq Whitehead, that could be a potential steal of the draft there. Another one that I saw there at number 27 was Nick Smith Jr. for the Charlotte Hornets. LaMelo is definitely, he's talented as hell, but he's had his history of injuries. And then with Nick Smith Jr., I feel like he's a guy that can just get buckets. And in that situation, I think with the Hornets, like, there's always the opportunity to have scorers. And I think he could definitely kind of be that like Jamal Crawford that I think a lot of people kind of see him as. Whether he's coming off the bench or maybe he starts or is a spot starter. I feel like he's got a lot of talent. Again, a highly talented prospect that's going, I think, into a good situation in the later rounds where there isn't too much pressure there, but they have a lot of upside. I feel like where they can contribute.
Yeah, I mean for both of those guys and those fits, and then even how the teams did, I thought Brooklyn even adding Noah Clowney there, right before Whitehead, just another guy that I think has the type of upside that maybe Hendricks does. Maybe he's not as elite or upper echelon in that sense for a power forward prospect, but still was getting good marks. And it seems like Brooklyn's putting together a pretty interesting squad over there. And Charlotte got a lot of praise for their draft, just getting Brandon Miller up top, James Najee toward the end of the first round too. Obviously, like you're saying with Nick Smith, it's like they're really starting to fill out a team. Like absolutely, probably went more of like the fit route versus going for Scoot and then figuring out what to do after that. But I think overall, I mean they're starting to build around Ball and Mark Williams in a way that's like pretty sensible and starting to put together a team with an identity of sorts.
Yeah, no, I really like kind of just what they're doing overall. And what they always say is you got to build through the draft, and I think those two teams kind of they're heading the right direction. I think in that regard. So, but I guess with all that, and I don't, do you have any other picks that you might you like maybe in the second round or any other picks that you like too?
Man, yeah, I don't know if I stretched into the second round in terms of like what I prioritized here. I will say, I mean, Portland grabbing Ryan Rupert in the second round to go along with the other two that they drafted in the first with Scoot, obviously, and then your guy, Chris Murray. It's like, that's a really good draft. I mean, that is a solid draft. I know it's not Dame Lillard's like, you know, he doesn't put his stamp of approval on, these guys being drafted to his team or whatever. But if you're thinking about like what's best for the Blazers, like this was a really good trio of players as well. And, Rupert was a guy I think could have jumped his way into the first. So to get, kind of snuck along in the back, he's still obviously very raw, needs more time to kind of develop as an NBA player. As a professional, I just think like being able to learn from some of those guys that are already over there, like if they do resign it, Jeremy Grant or, just others, I think he might fit in pretty well there. And then Chris Murray, I mean, it was kind of nice, but on draft night, I was looking at, one of the analysts, I guess, went through his first 3 years at Iowa, and it's like he just doubled his production every single year from freshman year to his junior year to the point where he was scoring 20 points and averaging almost 10 rebounds. And it's like really start to think like what ultimately is going to separate Chris from his brother Keegan in a lot of ways. And like, it seems like, Chris maybe shoots from the left side, maybe doesn't have, as much as the athleticism or polish to his game, but like if he's still just advancing at this point and, can be like 80-90% of his brother, like that is a starting power forward in the NBA today. So that's a really, just solid pick in the mid first round there. So yeah, I just love what Portland did. They got some things to figure out in terms of, all their backcourt depth at this point. They got to figure out what to do with that to make a real team, but they have a good problem kind of facing them at this point.
Yeah, Portland, I think, was a good winner there too. So I think that's a good call out. I did like Rayan Rupert from France. He just seems kind of has a Sean Livingston, I think, aspect towards him, but potential to also develop that 3-point shot. I've seen him take some step backs, I think, in some of his highlights, and he's got a decent stroke. It's just a matter of fine tuning that skill. So I think he's got a lot of upside there. And then with Lillard and Scoot, I think there's a bright future, I think, for the Portland Trailblazer fans out there, depending obviously what they're going to do with Dame Lillard, but they got a lot of young talent. I feel like they're stacking up there. So, but we'll wait and see on that. I think in terms, I was gonna say, I think in terms of like second round picks, I like too. I did like Gregory Jackson from the Grizzlies. I think that was an excellent pick from your alma mater, right? So one of the top prospects that coming out of college. Tristan Vukcevic, Serbian, showed a lot of good highlights, I think, from his shooting perspective. It could be one of those, second round potential Jokovic's type as a Wizard. Again, the Wizards don't have too much, I guess, going on for them, so he can definitely get some playing time in there and get some reps. And feel more comfortable and build up some confidence. Keontae Johnson, another player I liked, going to OKC. I think we're seeing a lot of these kind of thicker, like 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" type of power forwards, kind of like the PJ Tuckers or maybe a Grant Williams. So I think he could be a potential good role player. And then Trace Jackson Davis out of Indiana was another player that I liked in the second round. Going to the Warriors, a lot of people had him as like maybe a late first round grade, early second. So I feel like great value there. So I think with all that now, were there any question marks or head scratchers in this draft for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to stay local to where I'm at, but in DC with the Washington Wizards, I was scratching my head a lot, kind of seeing the Koulibaly trade up. I get that he's been like trending upward and kind of rising up, draft boards prior to what was going on. But basically from where they're at right now, I just felt like this guy, obviously he's incredibly raw. I mean, 5 points, 3 rebounds in France, was kind of averaging in, the league he was playing in overseas. But it's like to kind of pass up, at least in my opinion, on guys like Taylor Hendricks, Cam Whitmore, Jarris Walker, possibly an Anthony Black. I think there's a lot of guys that maybe were more game ready, still probably had the same type of upside as a Koulibaly, but also were, more polished at the stages that they're currently at. I think that it's hard to see Koulibaly as being like your centerpiece kind of moving forward. I thought he might be a better fit if he went mid, maybe top 10, top 15 and kind of blended his way into a, more or less like a playoff-ish ready team where it's like he's not asked to be the centerpiece, but more or less like can use his raw athleticism, just in general, some of his intangibles to kind of like help a team get over, that hump. So I don't know, just it felt a little underwhelming, felt like a little bit of a reach there. And I'm kind of, just sitting back and like wondering, what maybe could have been for Washington, who needs just everything and, anything at this point.
Yeah, I think with Bilal, it's like, he's going into a situation again. It's like kind of a no lose situation, but at the same time, I think Taylor Hendricks might have come afterwards, and I think you had them selecting Taylor Hendricks there. So I feel like that would have been, a pretty decent pick there. But I think in this case, they were just going for the home run. Like this guy could be, I've heard like Giannis or like, Kawhi, like, I don't know, like all these awesome players he has the potential to be. So for this, it definitely felt like it certainly was a reach. It was a big gamble. It was a roll of the dice type of pick. So I think that's just what they went for. And it's like, yeah, worst case, we just get the number one pick, next year or something like that. So, but yeah, to your point, I feel like there was a lot of other talented players out there that could contribute immediately as well. So,
How about on your end? Any losers or question marks for you?
well, what's funny is that I really like Jet Howard, kind of as a shooter, as a prospect. I sense that he could be a better defender for sure. I think he has the potential to do that. But going at 11 towards the Magic, I think was a little bit of a reach there. They had a lot of other shooters, I think, going out there, which it was one of their biggest things that they needed. Anthony Black, who they got, I think, at the 6th pick, was decent for sure for that pick. And, I don't know what they're going to do maybe with some of their other, I guess, backcourt talent, maybe trade or whatever for some more wing or some shooters there. But there was Grady Dick, there was Jordan Hawkins out there. And I felt like that was, those were better fits for, I think, with the Magic and what they're trying to do there. So that's where I felt a little bit, oh man, Jet Howard, he would have been, better if that might have been a better pick in terms of value, I guess, if they traded back or did something of that nature. But at 11, with some of that talent that was already on the board still there, I think that was quite a reach there. So,
Yeah, I take your point about trading back because I don't think he was really on anyone's radar at 11 besides the Magic. I mean, I feel like he gives you a lot of things you were looking for in Dick and Hawkins, but maybe not to an elite level with the shooting. I know his IQ is brought into question and, maybe some of his defense as well by most analysts and stuff. I know it got a lot of backlash, but I've also heard some analysts basically saying like, look, now they grabbed Black, they have Jet Howard, they've got Franz Wagner and Paolo. I mean, they have a very large 1 through 4, which almost is like trying to embody what the Denver Nuggets are doing as far as size goes. But, talent also really matters in these situations. So it's like the talent has to be there as well as the physiques and stuff. But I think that's like kind of where they were trying to go with it. But I totally agree with you that when those picks were coming out, I was kind of just kind of in awe, or like, scratching my head a little bit. So I'm not entirely sure. I mean, the Whitmore thing threw me off so much that I was just like expecting every team, past the pick 4 or whatever to go ahead and grab him, and it never happened. So, with most of the picks, I was like, wow, they were really, must have been averse to grabbing that guy. But but overall, I'd say you're probably right in terms of trading down would have been, a tool they could have used in this sense.
Yeah, for sure. It's just one of those. I like the guy, but yeah, it felt icky. I think him going there. So at the same time, hey, if he becomes an all-star, he'll shut us all up. But yeah, it definitely felt like a reach. To your point, like I don't think anybody else was seeing him at that high of the draft. So
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see for Orlando and others. I don't know if I had anything else to kind of critique about the draft or praise in this sense. So, turn it over to you if you have any last thoughts on it.
I mean, I think one call out in terms of, I guess, a very minor trade, but good GMing. I think there was the Pacers trading back for Jarris Walker, who I think they really wanted to get just for like some, a couple picks here and there, right? So, it's one of those like, they got the player they wanted. I think they just traded one spot back. I don't know if there were other rumors going on or if they played the rumors into their favor, but I think that was just a smart move. Trading back one spot, getting the player that you wanted, and then also getting some other future assets there. So, but yeah, stuff like that I feel like intrigues me. So,
Yeah, why not? I mean, why not get an extra, second rounder or whatever else it is that you can grab? I mean, I feel like Dallas used that a little bit to their advantage, whether or not you think, taking Derek Lively over Case on Walls is better. But, we're able to get rid of the Bertans contract, and then they brought on Rashawn Holmes to basically get Olivier or Maxence Prosper later in their first round. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know. It seems like they made maybe the right move by like kind of moving back and be able to get their guy and get some reward for it as well. But then they went out and kind of did the same thing with another contract. So it might be a wash in that sense. But anytime a team can finagle their draft position to get some extra capital and get the guy they want, like you get an A in the report card from us, I guess.
yeah, for sure. Finessing, man. Just finessing. I think that was just a smart move by him. So, yeah.
For sure. Well, I guess with that, we're looking at, Friday, 6 o'clock is when free agency opens. In past years, we've seen, leading up to the Friday, there's a lot of activity that starts to get announced, even though it's not baked in the books as of Friday or whatnot. But we're looking at a lot of teams, looking for needs here. I mean, we've got only a handful of teams that I saw with positive cap, flexibility. In general, it looks like Houston's dealing with, almost $50 million. Indiana's next with 17 million. Then it's kind of San Antonio, Detroit with, 6 and 5 million respectively. And Orlando's the last team in the positive at $750,000. I mean, this all depends on like players opting back in, declining options. There could be trades, all sorts of stuff that could create, new sorts of cap. But I guess I'm going to turn it over to you, Wayne, to kind of frame the free agency board however you see fit. If you want to throw out like your first prediction, that'll also be cool. But like we said, we'll definitely have to kind of abbreviate this in a sense and not go through the full board of free agents available out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of, possible activity. But, with this whole like new collective bargaining agreement that happened, that's really trying to, I guess, get players like not as like team or player friendly, just like, oh, let's just sign like a bunch of players onto one team that are making like $20 million plus, right? I feel like there's a lot more restrictions on there from the team cap standpoint. So, which, hey, I think that's probably better for the game overall. So, so I guess with all that being said, I think one call out, and I might have mentioned this before or iterated, I think with regards to Draymond Green, right? I think we were talking about Draymond and this whole like, oh, is this goodbye? But we saw that they got rid of Jordan Poole, and then now it's like, you know what? He might just be back. I feel like that's what they're kind of setting things up for with regards to that. I feel like they really just want to keep that core strength together, or that core together with Steph, with Clay as well, and then with Draymond, just running it as much as possible, keep that core together. Goodbye to Jordan Poole. There were some chemistry issues there, obviously, with the whole punch to start the offseason last season. So I feel like keep Draymond. You already know you don't have to teach somebody new kind of how how the organization works, all that chemistry, fun stuff. It's already baked in there. So and then just kind of relock and reload with regards to the talents around them. So I feel like, yeah, that's kind of what the Warriors are going there. So I think, yeah, Draymond is going to go back to the Warriors there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he's got too much invested there. I mean, from his legacy and just time spent, where it's like I just can't see him darting, that situation for the Kings, or to maybe go to Detroit or elsewhere. It just kind of feels like wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I think the Poole trade was probably pretty strategic from a personal standpoint. I think those guys are probably happy to be in two separate locker rooms at this point. So no, I'm with you. I didn't feel any sort of like burning speculation, or I didn't feel like any like real possibility there of him moving. And I'll be honest, it's kind of a reoccurring theme when I look down the big board. When we start looking at the bigger free agents, I'm like, this could be a pretty boring free agency year in general. And perhaps those trade markets are going to be like firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think the biggest thing, right, is, all right, we're contenders, right? I think one player we can talk about is like James Harden, right? It's like, I'm James Harden. I'm only getting to get older. Do I want to play for a championship contender still with the 76ers? Or do I want to, make some money with, the Houston Rockets? They're just a bunch of young talents. Maybe I could, just go there. Screw getting that ring or whatever. I'm going to go get paid, go to an organization that, loved me before. And, I still have, I guess, a stronghold there, or, some fans that care for me. So go over there and then kind of just be a mentor towards a bunch of young talent. Be there with a great coach in Udoka. We can talk about his off the court type of issues and stuff like that there, but all in all, he's a good basketball coach. So why not? I guess look at that team if I am like a James Harden there. So, but yeah, again, like I mentioned, I feel like there is going to be a lot of maybe some team restructuring to keep some of these talented players, keep some continuity, and kind of go off of that. But yeah, there could potentially be some things like that with James Harden, maybe getting that payday a little bit more so of, and then being in a nicer, less, more relaxed situation than like the 76ers.
Oh, so you actually think Harden's gonna bolt?
I don't think he will, but I wouldn't be surprised. Okay. I'd be curious what is your take, because I know you love James Harden. So
yeah, no, I don't, and I think it doesn't. I mean, he doesn't make a lot of sense to me in terms of like when he feels like he needs to head to the exits or changes situation or scene, but to kind of like give back money to the Sixers, be able to put a team together. I mean, feels like he kind of bought in at this point. I heard he actually had a really good introduction, with Nick Nurse coming on board to kind of figure out where the team's going, what his role will be, and everything like that. But he sacrificed a lot of millions to try to find this pursuit to a championship, and at the very least, he's got this player option. You can opt back in for one more season, and then do it whatever you want. But it just feels like he'd be pulling the rug out from underneath himself so quickly, and it's like championship teams take a couple of years to like develop. I mean, unless you're doing the LeBron, Bosh Wade situation, like there's very few scenarios where that's actually feasible. And you tried that in Brooklyn and it didn't work. So it's like, I just wouldn't understand him going back to Houston. I mean, I get the comfort aspect of it all, but it's like, and then for what? You make some millions, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, him on that team, it'd be very interesting. I mean, I could see that being a playoff team, but in the same sense, like, it's just not a, doesn't seem like a fit right now on paper for either side, whether it's the young nucleus they're building and him kind of finding his way back into an old situation.
Yeah, I think the one biggest thing, right, for that too about James Harden not joining the Rockets, is that that could stunt the growth for that backcourt there, right, with Amon Thompson, with Jalen Green, with I don't know what they want to do with Porter, right, too. So, to your point, like it could just not make sense from the basketball standpoint, and fit their timeline, obviously. So, uh, but yeah, I guess a fun thing to noodle on there. But that I think that's like the nicest thing you've ever said about James Harden, if I'm not mistaken. So
I mean, him getting a team to the playoffs. I guess maybe that would be it. I mean, it would create a lot of headaches. I don't think it would be like he's not the veteran you need to rally up the troops and get the guys to get on board. I mean, he was an awesome player in his prime, especially when he was, obviously with Houston, Chris Paul and others. Like he definitely, had moments, had time periods where he was a good leader on top of all the offensive accolades and MVPs that he was kind of in the running for there. But yeah, I mean, talent, you know, aside, it's just it's just kind of like it's a strange blend, especially after having such a great draft and already having some really nice pieces in place. It kind of leads me to my free agent, I guess, first picks or what I think could possibly happen. Looking at the cap space that Houston has, they're playing with by far the most of any team, and I mean, there's immediately a couple of guys that I look at that would be just great targets for them. But I almost have like one of two routes. Like, I think a guy like a Jeremy Grant or a Chris Middleton, if you were to get him, on a 3-year deal and you're nearing max territory, it's like you add that right to the center of that starting, four of whoever it is, Amen or Porter. You got Jalen Green, Jabari, and Şengün. It's like to add a quality three that also has leadership, characteristics that have been around playoff basketball, playoff locker rooms, are veterans and can be leaders. Like that would be, an option for Houston to kind of consider. I guess with that, the feasibility of it is kind of hard for me to see because I'm hearing a lot of rumors about Chris, declining his player option, obviously, and then kind of signing a shorter term, shorter dollar contract to stay with the Bucks. Jeremy Grant is getting pulled by Damian Lillard, and he's probably going to make some tough choices for himself. But I would say even if Houston goes bust in that higher end scenario, I think they'd actually be wise by just giving this core 1 year to like figure it all out and then supplementing their roster with some key guys. And I thought Brooke Lopez and Grant Williams would be two guys that I'd look for to just add veteran leadership, character, toughness. Grant could play a reserve or starting 3 role, and then Brooke, right next to Şengün, whether it's again maybe starting sometimes, maybe it's just backing him up and being kind of that leader presence. Maybe spot starting at the 4 or helping out with Jabari. It's like those two guys, I think you could get them at reasonable prices, keep a lot of your cap flexibility throughout the year into next. And it's like, just see what happens with this core. Cause there's no reason to like put dynamite into it and try to like, supercharge it or take it to the next level today. Just give it a year or two to marinate,
yeah, I think if I'm the Rockets, right, you want players that I think are that embody right that kind of like you want that Udonis Haslem, but you kind of want to buy your own Udonis Haslem since they currently I guess they don't necessarily have that player that's been around for a while that kind of is taking that winning culture from one place to another. So a player that I know that and I don't think I've seen the latest if he has been picked up, but like a Bruce Brown, right, like some player that has kind of overachieved and is gritty, is tough, especially for a lot of young players, right? I think that's something that a lot of young players, as talented as they may be, they kind of look up to that. So there is a reason why Udonis Haslem, he was still on the roster, the back of the bench at 41 years old, right? But not really playing too much. But they wanted to keep that continuity with the Heat, right? So I feel like somebody that can be that veteran presence for this young team. I think you brought up Brook Lopez. It'll be interesting and definitely difficult for the Bucks to kind of figure out that situation. So, if it does come to them, parting ways with Brook Lopez, and maybe with the idea that they want to keep Middleton in there. So, if that were to occur, I think Brook Lopez also is definitely a great one. But yeah, something like a Bruce Brown, or Grant Williams, right? I think both those players could definitely help. I would probably pick Bruce Brown just because of the championship pedigree, but and hopefully without that Jimmy Butler too, drama that he's bringing in with him. I feel like, but at the same time, yeah, I think he's also a really solid player as well. So
Yeah. I think the key thing for me is like don't overextend yourselves today on a player that's you're paying too much of a premium for a guy that's maybe like your second to third option on a playoff team in a sense. Like I don't want them to break this bank before they get into their actual window and could either like extend their key guys or just like make another decision when more free agents that kind of are needed are available to them. It's just like even now, I feel like by adding a free agent, whether it's Grant Williams, Bruce Brown, Lopez, like those guys are kind of looking like reserves, if not like very short term starters for this team. Because if you think Whitmore is a star, he's going to be at your three, and they've already got a filled out starting five around that. So it's like, let that develop. And I'd love to see this team just honestly like get some veteran depth, but just like don't go crazy and just see what happens.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those. I see Fred VanVleet, I think, is one name that gets tossed around with that team again because they have the cap space. They could use, potentially right that point guard, but at the same time, like, do you want him to be around for, maybe like the next 4 or 5 years? Could that stunt some of the development of that backcourt a little bit? I understand he's a great player and everything, but is that really beneficial? But yeah, player like Harrison Barnes, right? I feel like they can, you can always use that wing, right? So a player like Harrison Barnes, I think, could fit in there. So again, get some wing depth, veteran presence, embodies kind of what you're trying to look for and set that culture with the Doka as well there too. I think that's really in a nutshell. Whoever they pick, right, is kind of what they're shooting for.
For sure. Did you have another player or team to kind of keep your eye on?
Man, I mean, those were a couple of the ones that I was thinking of. Like, it's one of those. I I know with Kyrie, right? Another player you love too. Uh, I'm trying to figure out if if there's a situation that he can be in that fits kind of him and what he's looking for. But I see him re-signing with the Mavericks. I think he fits Luka pretty well. They only had, I think it was just this previous season, right? I think was his, it was like a half a season, I think, with Luka, right? So, but just yeah, just hasn't had that time to gel with Luka as much. And like we've mentioned before, these things take time. With KD even over there at, Phoenix. But yeah, like with the Irving, you know, he has a young, talented player, one of the best players out there. Irving can play off the ball too, so I think they're setting themselves up really well for success there. So in terms of if Kyrie really wants to win a championship, like I think you guys stick with the Mavericks. You got a great owner there. They're looking out for you. Maybe they do try to add a star via trade or something like that, or they've had I guess some decent draft picks here too. So maybe they are able to swing something else there. But I mean, if Luca, like that's a tough playmaking backcourt. I feel like that you can't really beat. So Kyrie, I think, is staying. I don't know if there's anywhere else that makes sense for him though, but I would definitely bet on I think him rejoining the Mavericks there.
Yeah, it's almost like there. I think for all the teams that are in contention, a lot of them have point guards. And if they don't, then they probably have other stars that are occupying like the majority of their cap space at this point, where it's like there just aren't a ton of great fits for a guy who wants to make top of the market money, play for a contender, who's an absolute team and energy killer for every single team he's been on since the Cavaliers. It's like, so the market for him is getting obviously drier and drier as the years go by. Dallas is kind of in a, honestly, like a, you like, we can't F this up kind of situation. And like they're almost handcuffed to him because they made, they took a swing. They took a swing to trade a lot of their depth to get a guy who they thought would ignite, that team, that offense, even more so than Doncic already had. And it's like it actually did the opposite and then took them out of the playoffs. It's like it's a huge headache, but now they're kind of like they have to almost double down in it. So if it's not Dallas, you know, obviously LA is always something you keep your eye on, like whether or not he would take a huge pay cut to make that work is one thing, but outside of that, I mean, just a couple other interesting scenarios and how it would work out financially is, kind of TBD. But, could you see some sort of sign and trade options with Kyrie going to, I don't know, either a Minnesota or a New Orleans, where, New Orleans was hot after, Scoot Henderson, talking about Ingram or Zion, like could a Kyrie for Brandon Ingram type swap with maybe some other assets attached to it. Kind of work, I guess, maybe in theory for that side. And Minnesota's traded their entire cupboard. At this point, would a Karl Anthony Towns to Dallas for Kyrie maybe work there? Take out some of the glut down low with Minnesota. You got Rudy Gobert left over with Ann Edwards, a Kyrie Irving there. Not that I think like Kyrie is the answer for either of those two franchises or even Dallas, but it's just like, you just got to get creative, I guess, with these kind of situations. I mean, I'm on your side. Like, I think he's re-signing in Dallas based on their need, but just trying to think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, no, that would be interesting if they are able to do some sort of like 3-person deal, sign and trade type of thing. Brandon Ingram, I think he would make really like great sense, I think, towards Doncic. His game translates, I think, really well to that. That pick and roll could be really valuable. But at the same time, like, if they are double, triple teaming Doncic, Ingram can create his own shot. So that would be great. But yeah, I just don't think that at this point the Pelicans want to do something like that. With Ingram specifically, maybe Zion, that could be fun. Depending on, I guess, a number of factors. But if, the finances make sense, like that could be something. But, like you mentioned, though, Doncic, they don't want to miss on this. Like, this is a once in a generation type of talent. I feel like they have. So they really just want to make sure that they have players in their prime that they can control, that they're communicating with those players, for better or for worse, with Kyrie and all his, kind of off the court things that he does. Like, he's such a talented player still. So, yeah, I like to think that there's other creative things, but I look at the teams, if they were to like sign something more straight up, it's like, yeah, the cap space you were mentioned before, like Houston Rockets, probably not. Pacers, I don't know. Halliburton, he definitely is much more the ball handler there. Spurs, that could be a fun one, but I don't think in Popovich's world he would want that to happen there. So that could be something for Fred VanVleet, maybe. I don't know. Like if he senses like that's more of his a better situation for him. He's already won the chip, get a good payday, get a nice young roster. That could be a fun situation for Fred VanVleet there. But yeah, Kyrie, I think in what he's looking for, I think he'll probably just want to stay with the Mavs here.
Yeah. I mean, go down the board, with all these teams, and it's like you either think like, oh, they've already got a young point guard, or they just drafted one, or they've got a nice vet there. It's like, so Kyrie's kind of done it to himself, where it's like he's constantly, kind of burned a lot of bridges along the way, and it's like, hey, at the end of the day, like there aren't a lot of options left. Like you're really kind of limited now to just a handful of teams. But I'm glad you brought up Van Vliet, because I actually have him circled here next to the Spurs. And I'm right there with you. I thought that looking at their roster needs, their cap, space as of right now. I mean, they could probably sign two guys at mid level or higher where it's like, yeah, everything is trending positively for them. They're, at, I think with Wemby now more than, your average rebuild team. Like I like Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson, and Trey Jones is a really serviceable point guard too. You know, but you get a Fred, Van Vliet, who's already won a championship and obviously is, much more productive player, I think, than Trey Jones today. It's like, I think you could consider, moving Trey to a reserve role and having Fred, kind of pilot that offense with Wembanyama. And, I was just thinking if you got some money left over, I was looking at a Bruce Brown or perhaps a Kyle Kuzma to kind of take over the four for Jeremy Sochan, at least from the start. So it's kind of like, I think they have some options here, but some, obviously really, exciting young talent on that team. And if Pop has some money to spend, I think he's going after guys who have either won championships or, can kind of bring over those, veteran type qualities to this team that, desperately needs it at this point.
Yeah, I would love Fred VanVleet to join the Spurs. I think, he can shoot off the ball, right? And if Wemby, if he's this generational talent that he very much seems to be, he's going to want to dish it out. And Fred VanVleet, like, if you watch kind of what Kawhi was doing over there with the Raptors, like he was always ready to shoot. So great at the catch and shoot, can steal the ball. So like, hey, you got a backcourt guard such as Fred VanVleet, who averages like 2 steals a game, right? Have him, and then also Wemby, who's going to block like 3 blocks a game. Like that's a great defensive team there. And then you got all the other like wing talent that you just mentioned too there to help defend. Like that's kind of a good Popovich team. I feel like that he would want. And then you can definitely add in some pieces here and there to potentially grow into a potential championship contender, or at least a contender of some sort. So I think there's a lot of great things that could happen if Fred VanVleet were to join the Spurs there. Great fit, I think, overall. But we'll see about that.
Yeah. I was also thinking like a Jakob Pertl might be a good guy to bring back to San Antonio to kind of like hold down the 5 in the more traditional sense, because I don't know how Wembanyama actually plays, like over the course of a season. Obviously he's 7'5", he can block a ton of shots, but then you also see him like taking possession and being kind of like a ball dominant type player and, creating shots for himself, hitting threes. So like, I'm just wondering, like, with a guy like that, do you just run with all wings and just play small ball, or do you could you have a more stable 5 in a sense, and then just have him be like your floater that just kind of runs around the floor and blocks shots and pops out and hits threes too?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but I do imagine like I don't know, like a player. I mean, a player like Draymond would be good, I think, for him. Like a player that doesn't need the ball. I mean, I feel like Draymond is just like a nice piece, right, to usually have. But like a player that doesn't need the ball necessarily offensively, will do all like the dirty things on defense. Because if Wemby's gonna sometimes play out of the paint or like be taken advantage of, I think on the defensive side, like he on pick and rolls, like a lot of people are gonna probably try to see if they can take him off the dribble there, especially rookie season and such. So that definitely is where I feel like having a player with length and athleticism can definitely be a key contributor on the defensive side. So I don't know, something like that I think makes sense. On the offensive side, like he definitely he takes like 2 steps from the 3-point line and everything. He's already in there. If that, he probably just needs 1 step really. And he's in the paint. So I think with that, you got to have some decent shooters. You got to have players that can just catch and shoot at a whim. So I don't know. I definitely feel some players like that could help with Wemby's development, though.
No doubt. Any other players from your board that you'd like to discuss?
I mean, I'm kind of just looking down current free agents right now, and I definitely think, I don't know what your thoughts on this, but like, Russell Westbrook, I think he's going to re-sign with the Clippers. Like, they really liked him. A lot of the players just had a lot of positive feedback. It's one of those things like does he make is he a championship contending like a point guard? Because he did shoot a little bit better in the playoffs and they did battle some injuries, but like is he a player that can fit within spacing the floor, right, with Paul George, with Kawhi, who are a little bit more ball dominant there? I don't know yet. So I think that's where I'm not too sure, but you know, he brings a lot of excitement, I think, towards that Clippers team. And in the playoffs, he was probably arguably like their best player again because of the injuries that the Clippers went through. So, kind of mixed feelings with that, but yeah, he'll probably be back there. But yeah,
Yeah, I was just glad that it felt like he got back to his old self being with the Clippers versus that whole nightmare with the Lakers. It was nice to see him kind of rejuvenated. He had a lot of energy in the playoffs. It's tough with the Clippers because you don't know how many games you're going to get out of Leonard and George these days. So it's like the
mm-hmm.
championship upside, you know, that Westbrook may be contemplating when resigning with the Clippers. It's kind of like, I mean, I like the people on paper as far as like the roster goes, but then it's like in practice, it just never seems to kind of go the way it's supposed to, the way it's planned and stuff. So it's like I don't know with Westbrook. If he's not looking for a situation, there are not many out there where he can actually start as a point guard in the NBA today, whether he's playing for a championship squad or, a completely rebuilding team that just needs some veteran minutes. It's like the only options I think for him, like today, besides the Clippers, are maybe going this veteran minimum route with maybe Phoenix and taking that post. Like we don't know if Phoenix will end up deciding to trade Aiton to bring over a point guard or just kind of create some cap flexibility for itself. But I've heard at least that situation's been rumored with the Suns on Westbrook, on John Wall, on Isaiah Thomas, just to like get a guy who looks like a point guard back into that role.
Yeah, with Phoenix, that's a fun part because it's like, do we want a great defensive center like DeAndre Ayton, or do we want a point guard since it's a point guard lead and we just got rid of one of the best point guards of all time, and Cameron Payne is not our point guard or whatever, right? So that definitely was where I feel like honestly, like why not just be like, hey, uh, Devin Booker. Do you want to just be like our kind of point guard, kind of like that James Harden in a way? Like he already kind of he'll oftentimes bring up the ball anyways, right? They also got KD and a lot of their offensive sets, at least from this previous season that I saw, was like, yeah, just give it to one of them, do a high pick and roll, and that's basically it. And everybody else spread the floor. So, if that's the case, then we don't really need like your prototypical point guard. We just need some bodies there basically that can shoot, play defense, basically. That's it. So, a lot of players I think that are around there, and if they want to play for a championship contender, that definitely I think is a good team, especially with Kevin Durant and yeah, Booker there. I feel like yeah, why not? You know, maybe they do something like that there. But I don't know. I feel like getting rid of Aiden, like that's a lot of change then with getting rid of Chris Paul and Aiden. Great, you got Kevin Durant, one of the best players of all time, but he's only getting older, and yeah, like I mentioned before, you're going to lose a big defensive player like DeAndre Ayton. So for me, I'm like, you know what? Sign other players. Don't need a necessarily that big name point guard, but yeah, just some key contributors that can play defense and shoot threes. That's what I would do if I were them.
Yeah, we'll see. They've got some decisions to make because they barely have a roster at this point. So, yeah, the whole Booker idea at point, it's like I have no doubt that he'd be a productive NBA player. He'd be way above average as a point guard in terms of his skill set and everything. It's just like, are you getting the best characteristics out of Devin Booker as a point guard as you would as him playing off the ball, being his typical self, scoring 27, 28 points a game, where it's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's almost like they kind of pigeonholed themselves into that situation with the Beal trade, and they're just completely strapped, cap wise. So, they're probably going to just double down and go way above the luxury tax, and that's going to cause some issues in the years to come, just in terms of like transaction flexibility for them. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just have to think of other vet minimum guys that could maybe come over and play any of those spots, whether it is, the point guard or like you're saying with Booker pushed to the one, what kind of wings can you go find on the cheap to kind of, fill out the rest of your roster?
Yeah, no, I'm looking at like the point guards right now, and I don't know, it's not looking good. So like, I don't know, can they get a Pat Bev? Maybe a
Well,
Carter again. Reggie Jackson, I guess. I think I'm okay. I'm just looking at the free agent roster here. Like players like Kobe White, like 23 years old. I think they might be able to command more there. So, but depending on kind of what they're looking for. Maybe they are able to sign a player like that, like Dennis Schroeder. I think I also see here too. But yeah, they're definitely not going to get Kyrie, Fred VanVleet, D'Angelo Russell, Russell Westbrook. No, so I feel like that's kind of what you're up for there in terms of a point guard. So honestly, one of those players can definitely be helpful, and Booker definitely is good on kind of being like that Richard Hamilton type of going across the screen. The point guard just kicks it to him the top of the key, and he kind of just rolls from there. So that could definitely just be what they go for. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like might as well just just push him to be a little bit more of the ball carrier there, coming up the four. So, but what do you think? Do you got any other options on your mind with regards to the Suns in terms of point guard, 3-and-Ds, or what?
I don't. I mean, I really do think they'll go the route of this vet minimum point guard scenario. I mean, I've heard the guys that I've mentioned so far being rumored. I think it's an attractive situation. Like if you are a John Wall and you've made a ton of money and it's like you've, kind of, tapped out all of your other options at some points, going team to team in the last handful of years, like a Westbrook, like an Isaiah Thomas, it's like, yeah, why not just go in and do that for a year? I mean, at the very least, like you get, designated for assignment in some sort of way or released or whatever else it could be. But, at least go there, get some money and, try to win a championship if that's really what you're after. But yeah, they're so, they're stretched so thin cap wise that if I had a good situation where I could trade Aiton and, maybe bring back a guy like Clint Capella and, some sort of reserve, one in some sort of way, like I don't know how many teams out there have guys like that readily available, on their teams. It's kind of hard. Like a true rim protector is kind of a tough thing to spot for a team like Phoenix. But yeah, I mean, I've heard the Jakob Pertl, Fred VanVleet for DeAndre Ayton situation scenarios in a sign and trade. I think that would be easy. I think that'd be a good deal on paper, although Jakob doesn't really like protect the rim like a traditional five would. So it's kind of like, yeah, if Atlanta could part with, I mean, they're not going to part with like DeJounte Murray or Trae Young or anything like that. So it's kind of like, I don't know, not for Ayton at least, but I'm just trying
Yeah.
to get creative there. Like, could there be a 3-team swap? Like you're saying, could another team jump in where it's like these pieces start to fit a little bit? Phoenix ends out, getting rid of Ayton and maybe something else, and they, downgrade a bit at center, but they also get like a competent, starting to reserve type point guard in a way.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's like, would you like, maybe they are able to get like I don't know, Reggie Jackson, right? Something like that, like on a minimum deal, right? Because I think it's like 33, 34, past his prime, whatever, right? Do you get him to start be your starting point guard and then have Aiden as opposed to, what you were mentioning before, an Aiden for Portal, and then also Fred VanVleet. Like, I would pick the Aiden and Reggie Jackson scenario like 10 times out of 10, I feel like. So gives you that rim
Yeah.
protector that Aiden is, rebounding machine as well. You don't have to trade another asset. And that's the whole thing. I feel like it's like, how many more assets do we want to get rid of if I'm the Suns, right? From our team that went to the finals just a couple seasons ago. So I feel like keeping the continuity and just adding in some more veterans are there, I think at the minimum, is probably the best way that they're going to go.
Yeah. The funny thing that I think another analyst, I can't remember which one it was, but they were almost laughing to the sense of like, okay, So essentially, like Denver took care of you last year in the playoffs, and now you come back and you basically swap out Chris Paul for Bradley Beal, who's, you know, adding some scoring, but definitely doesn't like add some sort of like any sort of defensive punch. And now you have no point guard, and your roster's kind of completely in flux. Like, and we should fear you. Like, we should fear you more going into next season than last. It's like you've kind of depleted your roster and handcuffed yourself for Bradley Beal when all along you had Chris Paul and a little bit more flexibility. So at this set, at this point, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, would you be intimidated by the Phoenix Suns like coming into next year? Like, does that Bradley Beal addition like really take you to another level? Like, it's hard to say. Like, would you rather have Paul and more cap flexibility, maybe some additions here in the offseason versus Bradley Beal and really no flexibility at all?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for sure. I think they definitely it kind of begs you the question, like, what would the Suns be like, right, if they honestly just kept, if they didn't have Durant, if they just kept Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, I think, right? So what would that have looked like? I think they also gave up some draft picks there too. So it's like, they could have used that draft capital to fill in the roster a little bit here and there, right? So, but yeah, they gave a ton for Beal. They have tough cap situation now. So they're almost going the opposite direction that a lot of teams are going with, like, the Warriors, like, all right, we've spent a lot of money now. Buy Jordan Poole, go goodbye. We're gonna get, player, Chris Paul for 1 year. And then, yeah, we're going to kind of restructure the contracts, I think, basically for, Draymond Green and Klay Thompson there. So, or just, signing for cheaper, basically, right? So I think that's kind of what they're going through versus, yeah, the Suns are just going like, you know what, there was a different collective bargaining agreement that, oh, whoopsie daisy, like, they're kind of going the other way there. And then, yeah, just signing vet minimums now, I feel like is what they're just basically be going for. So I don't know. It's a tough situation, but they can't play their starting five basically all game long. They're gonna have to spell them. So
Yeah. I think to answer your question, they'd probably be a pretty damn good basketball team, all things considered. I mean, yeah, you don't have Kevin Durant, but in a lot of ways, like, I don't think they acquired the Golden State version of Kevin Durant, the OKC version of Kevin Durant. I age matters, injuries matter, attitude matters, like a lot of this stuff does. And, if you had all those first round picks, like you're saying, and maybe, you part ways with Chris Paul, but you're able to sign like a Fred VanVleet this year, like, that's an exciting team. VanVleet, Booker, Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Ayton, like, that seems pretty fun. So I don't know. A lot of things could have happened. I mean, and, if we're looking at the draft board, what would they have drafted this year? They would have gotten Derek Whitehead or possibly a Clowney to be in reserve territory. So it's like there are some interesting scenarios that probably would have played out if things hadn't gone the way that they did. But yeah, that's what makes this fun, and we'll see what happens with Phoenix.
yeah, for sure. Are there any other free agents that you're looking at, and maybe some good landing spots that they have? Anything that intrigues you there?
Yeah, I think this is my last one that I wanted to throw out there, but a guy who received a lot of hate this past playoff season. I mean, probably through last year, but our guy Dylan Brooks, who I think has been just like, canceled by the entire NBA at this point. I mean, I think there is some talent there that just needs to be kind of grounded, needs to be brought back to earth, needs to kind of, be humbled in a lot of ways, like going into next year. But I think if he gets himself right and is more or less like the Dylan Brooks from a couple years ago in Memphis, I think a perfect team for him would be the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think going into next year, if we're looking at what they kind of need, they need some guys with, the ability to play on the wing, to bring some good defense. Can't really say hit a lot of shots because that's not something that Dylan Brooks was really capable of doing last year. But, if they sign Karis LeVert, they'll have a mid-level exception that they can use on a player like a Dylan Brooks. And I just think if you've got Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell taking care of like the bulk of the obviously like the ball handling and offense, and they have guys like Evan Mobley and a lob threat like Jared Allen. It's like you're just looking at Isaac Okoro, Levert, and Dylan Brooks to kind of like basically share some 2-3 minutes there. And I think he does bring a lot of veteran leadership in a sense. I mean, he's got some experience there. He's played on some really gritty Memphis teams. I think that he'd fit in pretty well with the attitude of that team. And again, like, I don't know where Dylan Brooks goes from here, but like, if he had learned anything from last year, it was like maybe turn down the volume a little bit and just play a little bit better and kind of get back on the right track. But I think playoff team like Cleveland would be a good place to land for him.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good one. I think that could be like one of those, he's a veteran player that almost kind of like a Pat Bev, right? Where he's kind of been through the ringer with a couple of teams, but I mean, he's only played with the Grizzlies here, but definitely got a lot of flack for his approach on, I guess taunting some, opposing star talent, the opposing team's star talent there. So, yeah, I think he could be a good contributor there. I think I've been seeing a lot of heat, actually, rumors there. That could be an interesting one. He definitely has like, kind of fits Heat culture, I think, right? Like has this tough-minded, kind of arrogant, sense. He just needs to shoot a little bit better. I think that's the thing, especially during the playoffs. So, but yeah, if that could be like a nice revenge tour, I feel like if he were to go there, join the Heat, and then kind of reignite some flames there. I feel like, hey, joining the Heat, I feel like that could be a fun story if he were to go there.
Yeah, no, I could see that happening, and I have seen some like bold predictions that he'd go to Milwaukee too. I think that they're always kind of trying to find like a veteran type. I don't know if it's just wings or like guys who can play, down low. I mean, they've acquired guys like Joe Ingles and obviously Brooke Lopez, and I just feel like Grayson Allen. I feel like they're always going after like these kind of gritty veteran types where it's like, they're just trying to build out their depth, even like Javon Carter types. But yeah, I could see Brooks. Brooks, I think, definitely belongs on a playoff type team. Like, I do think that I do think he'd have some value on a team like Houston or Detroit, where he's like coming in and trying to like establish some culture there. Whether or not he'd be like the best influence if he's on his own is another question. But like, if he's not fitting in with a group of vets, then like, yeah, hopefully there's another veteran to balance him out in the locker room of like a Houston or Detroit, a young team. But I think he could bring a lot of value to kind of wherever he goes.
Yeah, I see Houston potentially too. Like, just add some bench talent there. Doesn't have to do too much. Again, when you have a young team, it's nice to balance that out with like just tough players, right? And for all the flack that Dylan Brooks is, he's a tough guy, and I think having that influence could be helpful for, some younger talent there. And yeah, he just doesn't have to shoot that much. I think that's the key thing. So.
For sure. Do you have any other thoughts on free agency or NBA?
I don't know. I guess that kind of caps up everything here, from what I've seen. But like kind of rounding it up, right? It is going to be a lot more challenging. I don't think we're going to see as many big splashes, via just straight up free agency. Again, there's only a handful of teams that can really just sign out players outright. Definitely, there can be some potential for sign and trades. And we've already talked about a number of those already, but there's probably going to be much more, I think, three-way trades like you mentioned as well. So, but yeah, I think that kind of encapsulates at least, some of the major, I think, free agents that could happen. But, there can definitely be a lot of big changes that we're just not aware of, that we're not even talking about, or nobody's talking about, potentially in the future. So, just, I guess it's an exciting part, I think, about free agency though, is all this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of a weaker class this year. I mean, to have like Harden and Kyrie at the top, it's like what falls beneath that, like you were saying, guys with player options or restricted free agents in a lot of ways, like we didn't talk about Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. It's like kind of figuring the Lakers will match whatever comes out there. But no, I mean, for this year, I think the teams that have built a lot of cap space for themselves would do good on their own selves to kind of like not go crazy, like almost, pull the reins back a little bit. Like we're saying with Houston and others, it's like if your window isn't this season, like maybe just see what you have and kind of dip your toes in the water before diving right in. So that probably won't be the case for a lot of the money that's available and the guys that are as well. But one would like to hope.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I think how teams kind of get rid of talent or restructure the contracts, right? Especially the big contenders such as the Warriors, right, that they're currently doing right now. I kind of wonder if that was like this whole reason why they brought in Dunleavy and said goodbye to Bob and everything over there. So it's like, hey, let's just redo this. You're not going to like it, so let's bring in somebody else to do it. I think that's kind of what they were going for there. So, and I think a lot of other teams maybe are kind of going that route that, we're are kind of going through this whole restructuring. So, yeah.
For sure. Well, we can put a bow on this episode as far as the draft goes and free agency. We'll see what happens this week into the weekend. And, we'll be here for any sort of coverage after the free agency period happens, possibly another episode, just kind of recapping what did happen the first week or so. But yeah, I guess with that, Wayne, do you have any final thoughts for tonight's episode?
I did. I think we talked about Flaming Hot Cheetos, I think the previous episode. And this past weekend, I did watch Flaming Hot, directed from Eva Longoria. So, interesting story with regards to how the Flaming Hot Cheeto got, I guess, invented, and even some controversy from my understanding too. So, it's on Disney Plus. I watched it on Disney Plus, and it's definitely a feel good kind of movie, I would say. If you're not familiar with the story of how the Flaming Hot Cheeto got, I guess, put to market, there was a janitor who worked for Frito-Lay's, kind of started from the bottom basically, but then, there was a lot of, I think, layoffs that were happening. Was like during some tough times there in the early 90s in like Southern California. And he was like, hey, let's bring a little bit of, I guess my Mexican heritage into this cuisine for Cheetos. And, I think he was also trying to branch into, some of the chips and popcorn, etc. Right. Using some of the spices that Latinos grew up on. So that's something he did. Talked with an engineer there who was also didn't have a college background or anything, and kind of called up the CEO of the entire company from, I think it was with PepsiCo specifically, that owned Frito-Lay's. So called up the CEO and was like, hey, I have this great idea, of how to, I guess, infiltrate the Mexican market or the Latino market within the United States. We're the fastest growing market. How to go through all that, and then killed it in sales. And I believe I read somewhere that I think they the Flaming Hot brand in and of itself for PepsiCo is like worth like $1 billion for the company. So kind of crazy coming from a janitor, and then I think he eventually got promoted to I think it was like the head of like Latino marketing or multicultural marketing, I think, which for Frito-Lay's or PepsiCo, can't recall exactly, but which I think that kind of sparked the whole entire multicultural marketing like realm within marketing. So very interesting story about the Frito-Lay individual there. But yeah, Pat, I don't know if you have any thoughts about Frito-Lay, about that story, about Flaming Hot, anything these days. So we'd love to hear your perspective.
I have two thoughts. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is like, aren't the 90s so funny how like people without degrees or like people who like just got a GED and like walked in could like be the chief executive of like a huge, company and stuff. And like these days, if you get a master's, it's like Yeah, I mean, you just basically wasted like a 100 grand or whatever. But it's like, I don't know, man. It's just like the Masters is like the '90s GED, at this point. So it's just, I think that's the first point that comes to mind. It's like anybody with an idea, it felt like could just you know go to the moon, And these days, there's so many ideas out there, and even some ones that come up in the blogosphere or YouTube or other outlets and stuff, and it's like there's just so much saturation of ideas these days. So anyways, that's point one. But love Flamin' Hot Cheetos, love most Flaming Hot products to an extent. Nothing that goes into an aluminum can or in a cereal box. Like, keep that shit away from sweets and other stuff. But what I will say, you're talking about Mexican culture a little bit. I did a study abroad in Guadalajara, and while I was there, I found a snack that became seriously like my addiction while I was there. But basically, throughout Guadalajara, they'd have little stands kind of set up with potato chips wrapped in a huge, just kind of twisted plastic bag. And you could just go up, get the chips, or you could add, whatever you wanted to them. So, like, they had two things of Valentina's hot sauce, like the hot, the really hot, or whatever. Didn't matter which one you got, but like you basically pour it inside this bag, and it's a transparent bag, so you see how much they're putting in. You can go like the Italian beef in Chicago. You can go just a dip, or you can do like a complete dunk or whatever else it is. But then they'd also come over the top after the hot sauce and like squeeze a bunch of lime over the top. And I'm just telling you, man, like if you've not done that and you like Flamin' Hot type stuff, like it is just so good. But I guess just the point being, like, number one, wanted to bring out that snack, but in the same sense, like, yeah, they have a lot of different like spicy snacks that come in all forms and flavors and stuff. But in general, like, I think it was probably, you know, super ingenious of him to just tap into his own culture and into his own market and create obviously like $1 billion brand. But it seems like there's a lot of hidden gems out there still that haven't hit the mass market that probably should.
Yeah, I think the one thing that, I guess key takeaway that I got from that is just the idea of taking initiative on things. So, especially in a big company where it is really hard and challenging, right, to just get things done. He just took the initiative, like, there's a phone right here. I can just call corporate, and I'm going to call corporate. And I think, yeah, he pissed off like all his bosses and everybody above them, at least in the movie. I don't know what it was in real life, but pissed off everybody. He had like 4 or 5 people that were above him, right, from the hierarchy perspective. Right? They had like just this like scene of where they had a bunch of people like yelling, like, "Who is that? Like, who are we talk? Who? What? Why does the CEO want to talk to this person? Right? Like, who is he? Where does he work at?" So, I think that's just kind of funny. Just like all this bureaucracy, oftentimes, like for a solution, it could just be something so simple there. But yeah, and I think the one controversy, from my understanding too, and I don't know the whole backstory about all this, is that he didn't exactly invent the flavor perspective. I think the controversy too is that it was actually developed more so in the Midwest, I believe, or there were experiments that were happening. But I think to the movie's point, uh, kind of how he was taking everything. The janitor, he was trying to make things kind of from scratch and then sampled it to the CEO. Whereas, from my understanding, the I guess the Frito-Lay's perspective, that all that stuff was being developed in the Midwest in like a lab somewhere of like, oh, let's take these hot different kind of flavors and see if we can mesh it with Frito-Lay's or Cheetos or something like that. So I don't know what the exact truth is. Feel free to leave any comments on that. But yeah, regardless, though, he was promoted anyways, head of multicultural marketing, and they did a really great job from there. So he definitely took that that opportunity and just ran with it. So I think that's just like, I guess, what I took from all that.
Yeah, that's a cool story. I'd actually heard about this story, but maybe not to the same lengths as you put it out there as. But no, it's really cool, and I hope to catch the documentary. Or is it a movie?
Oh, sorry, it is a
concerning
movie.
this guy.
Yeah, it is a movie.
It is a movie. Okay.
Directed by Evil Longoria. Yeah, I might have said documentary. Yeah, it is a movie with like trained actors, nice story plot, and everything like that. So I think it's also got Tony Shalhoub too, playing the CEO of a PepsiCo too, which I love. He has hair like a comb over type of hair, which he's trying to be all CEO and suave there, which is hilarious. So kind of contrasting from my favorite character Monk that he played, right? So, but yeah, great movie. I think it's like a 6.9 out of 10 at IMDb. So misses that 7 mark, but I'll boost it up. It's a 7 for me. Definitely go watch it. Feel good movie, good for the kids. So highly recommend it. Especially if you want some just feel good times.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll probably check that out. That's a pretty good rating for, movie of its kind. It's not going for like the whale or an Oscar of any sort of kind. So I'm sure it's good and you endorsed it. So I'll have to watch it now.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So for my final thought, yeah, tonight we'd been marinating meatballs today, like throughout the afternoon for about 4 or 5 hours, just in some like, tomato sauce in general, and then kind of added some Italian seasoning to it. Ran out today and got some Italian hoagie rolls, had some hot peppers laying around, and then some Italian seasoning as well. But in general, like this meal was one of my better like home cooked meals, I think, over the last, month or so. And really came out of nowhere. Like the expectations were very, very low. We had meatballs in the freezer. It was kind of like, okay, what can we make tonight and what have you. But man, just hit the spot. I had a couple of them and they were just so good. I had a salad on the side with this Italian vinaigrette that I usually use and some grape tomatoes and stuff. But just trying to think, like the meatball sub is kind of like underappreciated in the sandwich game or like even in the Italian game. And not that we have to get onto an Italian food type breakdown because I know we've done that before, but like, are there other meals out there, in your opinion, that are just really underrated, underappreciated, like flying under the radar at this point that just really hit the spot for you and like you're just, hungry and need to fill your stomach?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's like under the radar because I know a lot of people that are on diets do this, right? But um, there's a lot of like variety with chicken and rice, right? Seems boring as hell, but I did go to this place in Portland once, right? Literally, went in a car. I think it's like a couple hour drive over there from Seattle. Went into a car, went over there, bought some Nike shoes basically because there's no sales tax on retail there, and then ate some chicken and rice and then left. And it was great. Uh, just some simple things like chicken or rice. I think if it's just you or yeah maybe just you and a spouse, you're feeling lazy, right? Some chicken or rice with some spices, whether it be Thai, which is what the place in Portland was. There's a great like Thai restaurant over there, just known for this chicken and rice, which basic if you think of the concept, right? But delicious as hell. So something like that. I was in a board call as well for a nonprofit that I'm with, and that was brought up, and I think some people were like, "Oh, chicken and rice, like, is that really that big of a deal?" I'm like, "Yes, I get it, man. Like, chicken and rice can be an amazing meal, as basic as it sounds." So, I think that's like one thing that came to mind there is just underrated chicken and rice, healthy too, but why not? It doesn't have to be bland. It can be delicious.
Sounds pretty good. Yeah, I'm also a big fan of just grabbing like your $5 to $10 rotisserie chicken over at the grocery store and then just doing whatever the hell you want with it. Like you can turn that into sandwiches. You can turn it into that with
Yeah.
rice. You can turn it into that in a stir fry. There's just so much flexibility with like going out and just grabbing that bird and stuff. So it's kind of no, it's kind of fun. Like I really again like had no expectations and was just kind of like really nicely surprised tonight. So it was a really good dinner.
Yeah, yeah. Where did you get your meatballs? Were they handmade? Did you get them at the store or anything like that?
No, I mean I wish I was like going the more artisanal route there, but yeah, I think these ones either came in from Trader Joe's or from Costco, but like try to find proteins, meats that my son will eat. So like the softer the meat, like the better off he'll have with it, and like obviously sweet potato, avocado, other things. are good substitutes and stuff, black beans. But no, meatballs have always been kind of a go-to. And for us, like sometimes we'll pick at some of the leftover meatballs and stuff. It's never really like thought of as, oh yeah, like we bought meatballs and we're going to like do a big thing around it, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
it sometimes seems to play as like that playoff Sunday type appetizer, you know, it's just like covered in barbecue sauce and you pick them up with your toothpick or what have you. It's like, I don't know, but I've always liked a meatball sub. Like every once in a while, I will just get it at a sandwich spot or at an Italian restaurant or something like that. Like if I have forgotten about it for 6 months or more, but damn, man, that was just really good, dude. I can't explain it. It's just really satisfying, really savory, and definitely filling.
What kind of cheese do you like? Do you like any cheese on your meatballs? Like what kind of cheeses do you put on there?
We did Mott's. You know, this was just the shredded kind. Again, really boring, really straight up. I think we actually had Kraft in there. Would love to like pull out a block and shred it over some sort of grater. But yeah, man, if I'm gonna get cheese, I mean, me and you have already broken down the cheese category. I feel like, but yeah, some Parmesan probably would have hit that a little bit better. You know, just like some grated Parmesan over the top or something like that. But no, the mozzarella was okay. It was just enough to kind of meld everything together. You know.
Yeah, no, I'm a big mozzarella fan. Mozzarella and parm. Like, why hold back on? Why life is short. Why have one cheese when you can have multiple cheeses? I feel like so meshing all that flavor, I think, is good for you.
Yeah, this household is never light on cheese. That's for sure. Like we will grab a couple blocks at a time, and it always feels like there's something sitting in there. But if one of us is hungry, sometimes we'll even bust out just the block of cheese and just take a big bite. You know, it's like we don't need crackers or bread or other stuff. It's just like I just want to bite into some cheddar, or I want to bite into whatever else we may have laying around. And no, it's always a good time.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I'm always hungry now. I feel like after these conversations, so I'll definitely probably go to I don't know, like a Subway or I know JP Graziano is a good
Don't go to
spot.
Subway.
Yeah, maybe not Subway. We've had a lot of conversations about Subway, I feel like, but I'll definitely have to find a spot for lunch, I think, and just like order yeah, meatball sub. I feel like that just sounds really good right now.
Yeah, or you can probably make it in no time at your house. So if you don't want to go the route of busting out the damn it, yeah, just if you don't want to take the time and marinate those meatballs over hours and hours, like you don't actually have to. I don't think even just pan frying, microwaving, maybe oven baking would be good. But man, yeah, really simple, really easy, and definitely it's the spot.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, that sounds great, man. Love the food talks. I think looking forward to more ones in the future. So yeah.
For sure. And we'll be back. I think, Wayne is actually going to embark on a big trip to Iceland here coming up. So we may be out for a little bit, but we'll be back soon enough to cover most likely an NBA free agency recap. There might be other interesting topics coming up as we move, deeper into the summer here. But if you've stuck around with us this long, thank you very much. Go ahead and subscribe here on YouTube. Give us a like, definitely fire away some comments. Check us back out on Instagram at Ball and Breakfast, and also on podcasts. We're all over the place. So just look for our name and you'll find us. And with Wayne, I'm Patrick signing off for the Ball and Breakfast podcast.